What's up, kitchen table wizards? What's up, deck brewers from all over the world? You remember this feeling when you're 0-5 playing casual Magic against a friend who is countering all your spells with a smile on his face? Well, this is the time to set things straight. To remind your opponent that we always keep it casual. And this is not your fault what's going to happen. Now you know what you have to do. You have to pull out the big guns. You need to go death by annoying Otter. Or as they say in Indonesia, kematian oleh Berang Berang. Angry Berang Berang.
Berang Berang. Pemarah ya?
Berang Berang, angry.
Ya. Kita lihat dulu ini adalah Berang Berang. Coba.
So yes, we are building a Berang Berang deck.
Berang Berang, angry.
Yes, an angry Berang Berang deck. But while brewing this deck, I have encountered some small problems. There are only 3 otters in Magic. And this guy here, he's new, but he's more like a commander card. So we're not going to play him. We can play Lutri. He's legendary, so I only play him once. Oh, by the way, Lutri, it's not really an original name, it's just a group name for Otter. Wizards, couldn't you do it a little bit better? Just call it Berang Berang. Much more fun, right? And then there's also the thieving Berang Berang, a card drawing super otter. And that's actually about it. So now one could argue that 5 cards is not really enough to build a deck. One could also argue that otters are not really annoying. They're actually rather cute. Let's look at this video. Okay, I can agree with this. But luckily we have 54 more slots to fill up the deck, to convince our opponents that otters are not cute, they're not cuddly, now they're evil creatures. And we will make sure that after this video, after you play this Berang Berang deck against your opponent, he will cancel his membership with the WWF. And he will join this foundation. Now before we head into the deck and we're going to mentally break your opponent, well, I just want to ask, if you like my content, give the video a like, put Berang Berang in the comments if you really like my content, and then you can maybe win a voucher from our good friends at Card Market over here. They are still supporting our channel. I love you, Card Market. Thanks so much. Thanks for spreading the love. Now it's time to go Berang Berang. And let's head into the deck. The deck only costs about 15 euros or $20, and you can find the complete deck list in the description below. Now otters are stylish animals, so we need a top-notch artist for our 16 islands we'll be playing in the deck. Yes, I'm talking about John Evan. Look at this beautiful art from Throne of Eldraine, the Berang Berang approved. Now I'm also playing 3 lonely sandbars, because a Berang Berang needs a place to rest, and 2 mystic sanctuaries, because our Berang Berang also needs some time to reflect. Now, you are still maybe wondering, what about the annoying otter thing you were talking about, Bram? Well, let me explain with this video. So as you can see, our otters like bouncing. And they especially like bouncing your opponent's lands back into their hand. So you can completely lock them out of the game. And then they can't do anything anymore. Forever. We start our list of bounce spells with 4 boomerangs and 4 Eye of Nowhere. You'll notice that it says return target permanent to its owner's hand. And a land is definitely also a permanent. Then we also play 2 Aether Trade Winds. Of course we're going to bounce our opponent's lands. And sometimes I'm going to bounce my own Lowly Sandbar or my Mystic Sanctuary to do some tricks with those cards. I also play 3 Consign to Dream for bouncing my opponent's lands, of course, and also 3 Capsize, which have buyback, so I can bounce them all over and over again. I also play 3 Regress, 2 Reskinned, and 2 Wipe Away, 7 more land bouncing spells. Now, I already talked about the Otter creatures. They're not a lot, but here is just a small slide to recap. The first Otter I play is a slam dunk. His name is Lutri the Spellchaser and he has Flash. And when it enters the battlefield, if I cast him, I can copy target instant or sorcery spell I control. This is usually going to be a bounce spell to make my opponent even more nervous. Now I also play 4 thieving otters and I usually play them when I have a good control over the board. So they can attack without being blocked, I can draw some more cards and bounce spells and I can slowly kill my opponent over a turn or 10. How beautiful this is. Now I also play some other creatures. Other creatures. We can call them the Otter Trainers. I play 2 Temporal Adepts because they also like bouncing permanents. And I play 2 Jace's Archivist. And I got this idea of playing the Jace's Archivist from an old video from the Manasource. Really a great idea from Wegde to include this card. Because without lands, your opponent is going to be holding a lot of cards. And in the case of the Jace's Archivist, when you tap him and play 1 blue, each player discards his or her hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. And this will be most of the time 7 because your opponent is not doing anything.
Berang Berang, angry.
Besides the creatures, I also play some Otter cards. Condescend is usually a counterspell that you cast for 2 mana. Your opponent probably doesn't have the extra mana to pay anyway, and you can scry too. I also play 2 Dictate of Crewfix. It's a card drawing spell for you and your opponent, but you don't really care if your opponent is going to draw cards because he won't have the lands to play any. And I also play this beautiful card Everdream. I must admit I just included it for the art, but it could draw me a card as well and I can splice it onto my bounce spells and draw a lot of cards with it when I get to 5 or 6 mana. Talking about annoying otters, I also play some annoying artifacts. Icy Manipulator has me tap target artifact, creature or land. Yes, land. I can also tap some lands of my opponent if he still has some on the battlefield for just 1 mana. And the Elixir of Immortality is great against aggro decks. For 2 mana I can gain 5 life and I can even shuffle the Elixir and my graveyard back into my library if I'm milling myself with the Jace's Archivist. So this was the deck list. In other news, let's talk about power rankings. Now this deck doesn't have the biggest and most powerful cards in here, but it synergizes well and can do some annoying things. It's not complex at all to play, you just bounce your opponent's lands and hope he stalls out and can't do anything. And it's pretty consistent in doing so. Now this deck isn't offensive at all. It plays mostly on defense, and for fun factor I gave it a number between 10 and 1. depending on who's playing with the deck and who's playing against the deck. Value for money, I gave this deck the lowest score so far, a 5, because although it's a very cheap deck to buy, chances are that you won't be playing a lot with it, because if you do, you will lose all your friends. Now, what about the metagame review? How does this deck matches up against other decks? Let's have a look. Against aggressive decks, it can be difficult. If your opponent plays a creature on turn 1 and a creature on turn 2 or even 2 creatures and he can put a lot of pressure on you, then you will probably be in some trouble. But against mid-range decks or control decks where you have some time, you will be doing quite well. And against combo decks, I'm sure you can disrupt the combo with all your bounce spells. So this was today's deck take. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, keep it casual. Bye.
Berang Berang. Pemarah ya.
Berang berang, angry.